Welcome back to another episode of The Local Dive. We are back after a couple-week break this summer, and this is Alex Scott, joined by Dean and Sarah and Ashlyn Portero. I looked the wrong way when I said that, but
one of us is sleeping on our intro over here.
Hey, good to be back.
Good to have you back. It's been a while. He hasn't been on a podcast
There
in a
we
minute.
go.
Oh, there it is. Limoncello, staying refreshed. We've also got key lime in the house.
Key lime, yeah, those are two great flavors. And then, yes, I do need 2 LaCroix because I drink them very quickly. Yeah, those are top 3 flavors. Limoncello. Is that how I say it? Limoncello?
Yeah, limoncello.
Okay. Limoncello and key lime. And the third one's up for debate. But those being in the top 3 is not debatable.
Top 3 of those. What's the third? What's your current top 3?
So the orange vanilla seltzer brand one.
The Polar?
Yeah, because they're all the same thing.
Yeah.
So that would probably be my third.
That's like people saying I want a Coke, but it's like I want a LaCroix, and what they mean is a seltzer.
Exactly right.
Oh,
Yep,
yeah.
that's exactly right.
Okay.
That's what I say.
Yeah, sweet.
Happy summer, talking LaCroix.
Yeah, light and bubbly, just like us.
Woo!
Oh my gosh.
We are excited to dive back into another episode. We will, in the deep dive, be talking about music in the kind of corporate gathering of the church. This was actually a submission from one of the listeners, Linda Larson. So we'll be talking all about that, diving into that in a minute. But before we do, on the topic of Christian music in the shallow end, let's talk about who our favorite Christian music artists are. You know, kind of more like not worship bands, but, you know, more kind of traditional CCM, which is contemporary Christian music for those who didn't grow up with... you know.
Well, let me begin by saying that truly that the 90s CCM, I was talking to my friends Lance and Tiffany, who are church members, about this last week over lunch. And the 90s CCM that we grew up in, the three of us that were talking, it really was it was formative. Like, it was like discipleship type music for us. This was really heavy Christian radio. It was like you found out about Christian bands through different means and different ways, and that really was actually really helpful for me in coming to faith, just being raised, you know, more of a I would call gospel preaching church. You know, it was really helpful for me to have that kind of music as kind of part of what formed me. So Caedmon's Call, I'm diehard Caedmon's Call, still listen to them regularly to this day. I'll probably have them on at some point today, actually. Mm-hmm. And they weren't really as mainstream CCM. A couple of their songs were on radio, and as they went along, like further albums were. But early Caedmon's Call, it was really heavy in the college audience. I was in middle school at the time when I first came on the scene. They put out some albums called The Guild that were like fan club albums. This is, again, pre-internet. I mean, all that kind of stuff. Like, you'd send away for it, you know, all these kind of things.
Part of the CD of the Month Club?
Yeah, kind of. So the music on there, if you try, you can only find like on Amazon right now. People sell them for like a couple $100, you know, because they're so rare. Music's on there is incredible. So, and then for like more of a worship kind of sound, our type music, mine would have been Indelible Grace, which is a big RUF, Reformed University Fellowship movement at the same time. And I still listen to them pretty regularly. I have them playing in the house on Alexa, play Indelible Grace pretty regularly. So that would kind of be my main 2.
Solid choices. Ashlyn?
So I feel like I've had a weird journey with Christian music because, I mean, we didn't go to church like regularly with my immediate family growing up. We'd kind of be on and off. But I would go a lot with like my grandparents. So like my first introduction was like, you know, probably the like contemporary service style worship that we sang at, you know, church. But then from 2000 to 2003, I lived in Nashville. And so like I had never heard of Christian radio or, you know, a lot of these artists like that Way FM back in the day would play. And so that was just like a whole, like Newsboys, Audio Adrenaline, you know, all of those types of bands that like that was just all new to me. So I definitely I listened to Newsboys, I listened to Audio Adrenaline. I like Caedmon's Call now. I listened to it a little bit, but more so knew the songs, Dean, probably coming right after you, that were on the radio. That was like my introduction to Caedmon's Call, but did like a lot of their stuff. Some good like female artists, like I remember, I really liked Joy Williams, but she went on to Civil Wars. And then I'm trying to think about, we were talking about Jenny Owens right before this, Plum. All that whole scene, I would say like Christian music that was popular in like the early 2000s. That was really like my introduction to like CCM world.
So Joy Williams had a Christian
Oh yeah,
music.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she was like a solo artist. She was on the original. There was a thing called the Wow CDs.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
which is almost like
Wow
greatest
Worship.
hits, and Joy would be on that.
Yeah, it was like now.
Yeah, it was
But
the
wow.
Christian version. It was the Christian version of Now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, now that's what I call music, and then
Yeah.
this one was
Yeah.
like
Wow, we love God.
something of worship,
I don't
I
know.
think.
Well,
I don't
then
know.
they did like there was like Wow. The first one was just Wow, just contemporary Christian music.
Yeah.
I thought it was like in ninth
Yeah, it was
grade.
like the biggest hits.
It
Or
was just the
whatever,
greatest hits. So they did
hits,
like Wow 2, Wow 3, Wow
Mm-hmm.
Worship, Wow this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Joy definitely was. She opened
Huh.
actually at Liberty. Caedmon's Call came to Liberty when I was there, and the two opening acts were Bebo Norman and
Yeah.
Joy Williams.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Joy sang like 3 songs.
Yeah. I also loved, so my sister and I, my sister was a gymnast. I did dance like all growing up. And so we had like all these, this is like probably so embarrassing now, but we had all these like, you know, it was like contemporary Christian CDs that like my mom would let us listen to when, before we got into like Britney Spears and, you know, all the good stuff as children of the 2000s. But we loved Kirk Franklin and Mary Mary.
Awesome.
Like
Yeah.
that. I mean, some of those albums were so good. So that was definitely like a hallmark too of my childhood.
We would walk into FCA camp every year, like as you walk into the service every night, and they'd always play Stomp. It's like a
Oh,
tradition,
yes. Yep.
like every year. Like they just, and
Stomp,
everybody dances for 5
Revolution.
minutes, and they come
Yeah, I was
in
going to
and-
say Revolution was
Yeah.
like a summer camp warm up song.
Yep.
Yes.
And then
So
is
good.
is Mary Mary the take the shackles off
Oh,
my
yes.
feet so I can dance? Yeah, great.
and
Great
then,
vibe.
And the probably the most mainstream that kind of almost, because here's the thing, and Tiffany in our conversation was bringing this up, that it really was where the Christian music sound was like on par with like regular music
Mm-hmm.
at the time, and that had never happened before, and it's not happening now, but on like on regular radio. But there was there was a season where that's why one of the things that was so popular, like it actually was like good singer songwriter music they were putting out, and then some actual bands, like real bands, so like Jars of Clay,
Yeah.
it was very mainstream. They were fantastic. And then others that just really had a big following. I mean, when I was growing up, Third Day, was definitely one of the pioneers too. And then this is a different category.
They were like the Christian Creed ish,
sorta, yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah, he has that sound.
Yeah.
Mac Powell does, and then more like the fun kind of, but also some meaningful messaging in their music was DC Talk.
I was gonna say we're 6 minutes into or 7 minutes into recording. We haven't mentioned DC Talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got
I
to
feel
be
like
on there.
that's
yeah.
I was gonna say they were the Jesus Freak was the first CD that I had. I think like I had some tapes of other, I don't even know what, of other stuff before that,
Yeah.
but that was the first
Casting
CD I got.
Crowns was another big one.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then for worship music, I liked Vineyard worship a lot when
Mm-hmm.
I was growing up, and then also the Enter the Worship Circle by it's like 100 Portraits or something like that, and somebody else, and that was big. They had some really great stuff on there. Yeah, there was so much stuff. Now I'm more into. I still enjoy Christian music. I listen to old stuff because that's what you do. You listen to music from your era. Everybody does that. That's why oldies stations exist, right? But I like a lot of the singer-songwriter stuff still. Like I like Caroline Cobb a lot. She's really great. I'd really recommend people if they're trying to find some new Christian music that's just solid and quality to check her out. Chrissy, my wife, is really into Andrew Peterson. Like
Yes,
she
he's great.
She loves him. So that we saw him at the SBC, and he did the Midwestern Seminary luncheon. It was great. And then there's a really good band called Arcadian Wild. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily put out Christian music, but they're believers. And the main mandolin player, they only have like 3 guys and people in the band from Arcadian Wild, is Andrew Peterson's mandolin player.
Oh, cool.
But he sings in Arcadian Wild
Okay.
as well. So
Yeah, it's like a
Nice.
mandolin, stand-up bass,
Yeah.
piano, and violin or
yeah,
something.
yeah. And the mandolin guy, who's one of the main lead singers, is Andrew Peterson's guy. Tours with him. He's on his
Yeah.
album. Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
cool.
Arcadian Wild's a great band. Okay, sort of on that topic, are there bands that like were Christian that then left, that like you were, that went mainstream, sold
were
out, that
sad
you were like
to-
either sad or kind of happy about, or sort of like blended the two, like POD? I don't know if they were ever
yeah, I forgot
Christian
about
or,
POD.
but like they always played Rock the Universe, so I think that made like they qualify as
They were
Christian.
definitely in that category where like parents were like, yeah, they're a Christian band, or that thing that you would always say where it's like, it's not a Christian band, but they're Christians.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
but not what you're talking about, Dean, where it's like, okay, the guy you know enough to know, he also tours with Andrew Peterson, who's very
he's like
explicitly
an active
Christian.
member of his local church. I mean,
Yeah, but it's like more so you're like
somewhere they claimed Christ, maybe, and
Yeah, but it's just like, is this?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely Jennifer Knapp.
yeah.
I mean, talking about, you mentioned some female singers, and in the late 90s, when I was probably junior, senior in high school, her Kansas album is probably the best Christian albums ever put out.
She was as big as it got.
It was fantastic. And she, since then, became a lesbian, had a deconstruction of her faith, all kind of the classic stuff we see all the time now. So I don't even know if she's even doing music anymore, but she's definitely not, I would say in step with a Bible-based faith, by any means. So that comes to mind. Then you see, the worst ever is Derek Webb.
Yeah.
Being a Caveman's Call fan, just really sad.
Yeah.
He just totally denounced the faith over and over again, and it just, and it's really almost like building a brand now off of being the angry anti-guy. Good grief. But I still listen to him all the time. His old stuff, Derek Webb, when he was Caveman's Call, he was Caveman's Call, right? He's such a critical part of it. So is that what you mean? Like that kind of what's happened?
Yeah, just kind of those, or people who you claimed as they're not Christian music, but they're Christian, I don't know, people that you listen to.
Creed. People try to say Creed was that.
Yeah.
Because Scott Stapp went to Lee University.
Yeah.
Yeah, and was raised by a pastor's house or something like that.
I think so. Katy Perry is probably at the top of the
sure.
list too of people who started a career in Christian music.
So she was Katie Hudson.
Yep.
And had a CCM career, pastor's daughter, and then became Katy Perry.
And all that comes with Katy Perry.
Okay.
We won't go there. All right, on the same topic, but slightly different. Music in gathered worship oftentimes leads to expressiveness with the physical body. What is your go-to move?
How about putting your hands up
Yeah.
or something?
Are you the guy who sways? Do you put your hand up? Do you put your hand up cautiously? What's your go-to move
ribbon in there
if you're feeling it?
I feel like this is a third,
And we're not making fun of
No.
this stuff, but
I think it's like a third dad, a third football coach, and a third Tom Brady fan. I'm like a fist pump mid song. I'm doing the action right now. I'm just sort of that boom, kind of put that fist up and do a little
the big bridge comes and you're like, oh.
boom.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Tiger Woods just nailed a putt.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, that too.
I think I'm definitely the one hand raised, or I could do the two side hands as well, out to my side, my arms at a 90-degree angle, not perfectly. I'm not trying to be stiff, in my worship expressions, but maybe I think so. Sometimes though, especially because if I'm standing, if I have to do announcements or something, so I'm standing up at the front, and so you don't have, this isn't we have just chairs that link together in our auditorium, but they're far enough apart to where you're not, I feel like growing up, I would always put my hands on the pew in front of me or
No doubt.
the chair in front of me. And our auditorium just isn't really set up that way unless
We're
you're
social distanced.
yeah, that's true.
Look at us.
So
for our neighbors.
So I don't have anything to do with my hands, and so unless they're but sometimes clasped in
Is it
front of
Anchorman? I don't know what to do with my hands right now.
I sometimes clasped just feels too constrained and still. So sometimes I have just given myself permission to just hold my hands at my side, but not in a weird way, but sometimes I just need them to not be folded, right? I need to show my body language that I am open to the song, but I'm not at the place where I'm going to raise my hands yet. So anyways.
I'm hands in the pocket regularly, just in life, So I'm sure without even realizing it, I'm very hands in the pocket during singing at church too.
Yeah. I'm arms folded a lot, which apparently means I'm closed off and
Closed off to
unapproachable.
the song.
Which then I was going to say,
Is that because you're an Enneagram 47.5 that you fold your arms?
I would need somebody else to tell me what number I am, but I don't think there's that many.
Alex is a 5, in case anyone was wondering.
Oh,
Okay.
Good to know.
What is a 5?
That would be my guess. I judge that off of you are you like to know how things work and investigate things and
true.
look into things and collect your knowledge. And so that would be one thing. I don't know. Anyways,
What are you?
I'm a 3, I think.
And what does that mean?
A lot of things.
I like to think things out.
No,
Analyze.
a 3. So, okay. I'll go on a whole tangent. I have been told, and I think 3 is the one that I associate with the most, although I have some a little bit of not sure about that. 3 is that, because Enneagram, it's everything is driven by kind of your like weaknesses sort of, or like what, so like for a 3, you are like your weakness is like deceit, in that like you're trying to like maintain an image, or like caring too much like what others think, so you could be deceiving yourselves, or you can kind of shape shift into what other people want, so deceiving other, like kind of something along those lines. Anyways, I've led us on a lot of tangents.
And for the Enneagram episode we're doing right now, what's mine?
You're a 7.
And is that bad?
Yes, personality tests are definitely meant to judge others. So.
Yeah, when you get to 7 in the book, you just hear like a dun dun dun.
I was just concerned.
Yeah. I don't know where we were before that,
Wow,
but
back to singing at church.
that's where we
Christian
were.
music.
So we'll use that as a pivot point, and we'll transition at this point into the deep dive. The first question that I'll ask is meant to be intentionally broad, but why do we sing when we gather together? Like, why is that a key component of the gathered worship service?
Well, I think it's biblical. So, I mean, it's also just, it's an opportunity, in the corporate gathering. We're there to worship. Like we're there to point our hearts and our minds to God, to what Christ has done, to the truth of who God is, and to the cross, and just to worship together. And so I think singing together is one of the ways that we express the truths of God that we receive, and it also is a way that we respond. We receive the teaching of the word, we receive God's blessings through gathering together, and we sing in response and praise and gratitude. That's the way that we offer ourselves to God. And we see in the scriptures, all the way through, that God has very specific directions about worship. And so even now today in the church, we're still called to engage in that corporately as a church body. And so yes, you are receiving during that time, but I think the focus is more to be on reading the words and thinking about them as you sing, and offering that in praise to God. We're not earning anything by that, but we do it in response to what has been given to us in Christ. So, Dean, I'm sure there's more you could say about that.
No, that's great. We have a precedent throughout the scriptures of believers singing, right? Of like expressing their needs, their praise, their worship. I mean, their adoration, their distress, like all the above through songs. So that's definitely been a posture of God's people, and really a presentation of God's people for a really long time. And we see in the New Testament also where people are encouraged to sing hymns, to sing spiritual songs. So that's definitely, and then also throughout the history of the church, when the church has gathered together, that has been a common practice. And that matters too. Church history matters. Mm-hmm. It's been a common practice of Christians, different traditions and different styles, different ways of doing it. Some sing a lot, some sing a little, all the above. There is that common thread of believers singing, as Ashton said, it comes through the scriptures, and the Bible commands us to do it. And also the Bible shows us that people did it. It's a believer practice. So I think that when we sing at church, it's not like just something we do because we got to fill some time, or because, people just like music, or because our band's really talented. It's because this is an activity of Christian people when they come together, especially as a local church. There's also a camaraderie in that. We're all singing the same things, we're all, and that the same words, it's the same God, and that all matters significantly too.
That's good. How can music be used? Obviously, we've kind of laid out the case that it's prescribed biblically. It's been done historically. It's for the good of the gathered church. How can that be used? Obviously, like this, the music doesn't replace the teaching or in the preaching of God's word. Like that should, probably that should be the most central thing in a worship service. But music is really helpful for formation. And so, how can people in the church think about that time of music being formative and helping shape theology and belief as they sing?
A few things come to mind. One, I think it can humble you in the right way. Like a posture of humility, where you're singing your dependence upon God, similar to prayer. I often see music in a way of almost like prayer to music. Mm-hmm. Being guided by someone else. I think it can really function that way, and I think it's even helpful to even see it that way. Because we see different kinds of prayer, right? We see prayers of lament, and we see prayers of thanksgiving, and we see prayers of request, type of thing. So I see it that way. It's a humble kind of thing, and then also I think you can teach through it. I don't think it's the same as preaching, nor should be seen that way. But I love when we're singing gospel-centered lyrics, very scriptural storyline of the Bible, understanding of our need, of Christ's redemption, God's love, God's mercy, God's judgment of sin, God's pardon of sinners. I love when I'm seeing those words on the screen and know that the people in our church that Sunday morning aren't just singing those words, they're actually seeing them and having to read them and hopefully think about them. And I hope they get stuck in their head and they're going home in the afternoon, because music sticks in our minds, right? It's catchy. And so those are some things that immediately come to mind, just sort of a simple version of things I think that can really be profound for people. A posture of humility as our dependence is being made known on God through singing. And also really its own classroom, set to music as well, while we're learning theology.
Yeah, well, I think too. One of the things I would jump in and say is that the corporate aspect, like there are things that, because if we're teaching the whole counsel of the scriptures and then singing things that, in a sense, like are going to be a kind of across the range of, belief and doubt and wondering and praise and adoration and kind of the whole spectrum of things. There are going to be things that, based on the way that the Lord is kind of involved in your life in that moment, that you're going to maybe struggle to sing, just in the midst of hard seasons. It may be hard to believe that the Lord is good, but as you sing that, and then you're surrounded by your church, and whether you're in a church of 50 or 1,500, that kind of corporate reminder of other people singing with you the same thing, knowing that other people around you are walking through difficult things, that like the kind of formative power of other people singing, and that the Lord is good, or that his grace and his faithfulness abounds, like it, and that's true for us. Like it can help kind of spur us on in the faith in moments and seasons where things are difficult, and you might be kind of just doubting God's goodness, and to be reminded sort of horizontal. Obviously, like the primary focus is us, I think, responding rightly to what the Lord has done for us in Jesus, and offering him praise, but also to be reminded and to remind others of God's goodness through song is a powerful kind of formative teaching. When somebody else sings, something, and you're like, man, I don't know if I believe that, but like if they believe it, not like a peer pressure kind of way, but just like a healthy reminder from your church that these things are true is a helpful aspect of that. Ashlyn, do you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, well, I think something that we can all relate to just as people is how music is something that, kind of shapes our lives, and that, we use music to kind of mark different seasons or times of our lives, or even like moments or events. And to me, that seems to be like a deeply Christian practice, because even like, again, when we go back to the scriptures, a huge chunk of the Old Testament is the Psalms, and you see David writing Psalms, for different reasons and out of different postures of the heart, whether it's suffering or praise or somewhere in between, repentance. I think about in the New Testament, when Mary learns that she's going to be with child and that he's going to be the savior of the world, she breaks out into song, And so I think to relate that to how singing together in church forms us, I think unless, I know there's a handful of people out there who just like maybe hate music and never listen to it and whatever, but the majority of us are shaped and formed by song and by music throughout our day-to-day lives. And so in the church, like as the people of God, I think it absolutely makes sense in a much deeper and foundational way, and transcendent way, that we are shaped by song and by participating in that through the corporate gathering, in the same way that we see that just kind of day to day in, our lives and in culture. And I think that can have a really big impact on the way that we view God. And as you mentioned, Alex, view our relationship to one another as brothers and sisters, members of the church together by, I'm always encouraged, like if I'm singing and I, see someone in my range of view who I know is going through a really difficult time and they're singing too. And I, exactly what you said, if that person can sing, God, you never change, or you're always faithful, or whatever it is, on Christ the solid rock I stand, then, certainly I can, kind of reorient my heart to get there too. And then I think it also helps us, like I can think of different songs that have been important to our church in different seasons of the church, and probably different people. If you sampled 20 different people at City Church, they might say different things. And so I think that's great that whether we know it or not, like the church kind of has a body of songs that it has lived through and navigated life through, that we may not even always be aware of, because sometimes it's so easy when we come into church, if you do just kind of go through the motions, then you kind of think of it as we have the welcome, and then we have the singing, and then we have the sermon, and then we have some more singing, and then, we leave. But when you actually see how all those things connect together so that we're being formed by the truth of God through song, through preaching, and then we have the opportunity to be with one another as those things are happening, like that takes on a whole new level of meaning and experience participating in, a Sunday service or a worship gathering. So anyways, that was a lot of rambling, but I think we can be a lot more thoughtful about the purpose of singing within the corporate worship gathering, and it just brings it so much deeper and more fulfilling, I think. Not that that's the sole purpose, but I think it helps us understand more of the deep purposes that I believe that God has for us by giving us music and giving us song.
That's really good. One of the things, Ashlyn, that you said sort of in that at the beginning is how, oftentimes music is tied to like emotions. I mean, when you were saying that, I was thinking like, yep, somebody made a breakup playlist, and then somebody else has their summer barbecue playlist, and there's these themes and emotions that are expressed through music that are powerful. Music has a way of kind of encompassing, like a range of emotions, and you really feel those things. And when theology and teaching is set to music, it can be a powerful thing, but we also don't want to use emotion in a manipulative sense in the gathering. So how do we maybe balance and think about the emotional power of music, and lean into anything from celebration, hope, to lament and suffering in the gathering, and experience the full range of emotions without it being emotionally manipulative? Is, I don't know, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a lot. I mean, heavy. I think that what are we responding to, I think is a really important question. I don't think you have to analyze that the entire time while you're in a service or anything. But am I responding to the truth of God's word, the reality of who God is, life circumstances, definitely. Like what is, or am I responding to like a key change, right? Or or something along those lines, or just like a song where it's very much maybe a song that's describing God and singing to God in a way that we don't really see much precedent for in the scriptures. It's more of kind of a modern day, Jesus is my boyfriend kind of song. Like, is it like, so Jesus said two things about this. He told the Samaritan woman that a time was coming and has now come when the true worshipers would worship God in spirit and in truth. So that means, if he says the true worshipers, then this logical conclusion is there's such thing as false worshipers, right? So spirit and truth. He wasn't talking about music at the time, but he was talking about worship, which worships all of life. That's really important to know that. It's a posture of life. We're worshipers all the time. Like we don't sing some songs having worshipped and then sit down, the worship's over. Like we're worshipers, right? We walk out the door on Sunday morning worshiping, not having worshipped, right? We had worship together. That's what we concluded, but then we go out worshiping. So worship me in spirit and truth. And by spirit, he was taking a little jab at the rigid Jewish religion of the day, where it was just all formality. There wasn't anything actually going on the inside. It was simply rituals, that kind of whitewashed tomb, clean the cup on the outside, not the inside kind of presentation. And then in truth, he was taking a little jab at the Samaritans, because they, rather than worship in Jerusalem, which they actually weren't allowed to do, they kind of constructed their own way of worship, and they worshipped on Mount Gerizim instead, where at this time in the first century, pre-cross, pre-resurrection, the proper place for worship would have been in Jerusalem. So they kind of changed the rules and changed who God's biblical claims to accommodate themselves. So in other words, worship in spirit as in something happening inside of you. Like this is actually like belief, that's faith is driving this. And then in truth, meaning we're worship God as he reveals himself to be, not a God that we want. So I think that definitely applies to music too. So that's kind of the scale and the lens I think we should see things through. And worshiping in spirit, meaning, and spirit's not a style. Yeah, as in like, am I doing this in faith? Like, is this like something that's going on the inside of me? Like, am I doing this because what I believe to be true, not a ritualistic thing? And worshiping him in truth, meaning that worshiping God as he is, as he's revealed himself to be, not in a God that I can accommodate and change to fit what I want him to be like. So that's just kind of like the filter, I guess, I think that we have in the Bible to understand these kind of things.
Well, and I think that's really kind of a helpful way to think about it, because if those two things are true, if we're worshiping in spirit and truth as you define them, it probably will be in quote emotional experience. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean everybody in the audience has their hands raised and they're, like outwardly expressing it, but they like there probably is some move of emotion when you rightly think about who God is and respond to his grace. Like that should move us. Yeah, I mean, you're crying, emotionally, but that there is emotional movement in that.
Yeah, it's a response.
Yeah.
It's generating a response in you. And I think worship leaders have to be careful in today's culture of church that they need to realize this isn't a bad thing, it's just reality, that this style of music that churches like ours are doing throughout church history is not very old. We're talking decades, not centuries, or even half a century. So you cannot judge the legitimacy of whether or not we're actually singing to the Lord in a way that's right and good by how somebody bodily responds, I should say, for better English there. And I think it's really important. Like when you get so caught up in the scene, like your evaluation is like, was everybody's hands in the air? Was everybody doing those kind of things? And that's not a biblical measure, for that. It's a good thing. It's a great thing, but like, it's not a measure. So I think I just want to, if any worship leaders are listening to this, just remember that. Like, don't culturally put a style onto what is right. I think it's really important because let's say you went to an Anglican church tomorrow, Bible believing people, right? Who love the word, love the Lord. They're going through the Book of Common Prayer and they're going through like an actual song sheet where it's very usually, they can have a little gusto, don't get me wrong, but it's very, somber. Are they like not worshiping? Of course, we would never say that, right? That's important to think that way. Like there's different expressions throughout all Christianity, including your own city, different expressions of how people, in their tradition sing to God. And as long as it's spirit and truth, it's all good and it's all right. All of it. Yeah. Yeah.
A choir or a drum set don't make you more worshipful one way or the other.
I also think it's interesting because there, are like endless conversations about the place of emotion within the context of a worship service, especially as it pertains to music. One thing that I wonder is a lot of times, are we talking about, a fleeting feeling, like versus like I'm sort of skeptical that we're being too emotional in a lot of contexts in a worship service, because if anything, like, I mean, I think it's a lot easier to get to like this quick moment of inspiration versus to actually deal with maybe like deeper emotions and the things going on in your life in a 3-minute song. Now, of course, we all know from listening to music that music can bring things up in you, even maybe that like the written word cannot sometimes, and so I think music has a great power there to do that. But I wonder if, like, as you guys were talking, I'm thinking about like when you go and see a movie and maybe it's like a really, intense, inspiring, conquering movie or something, and you leave and you like have that, you come out into the daylight and you like have that feeling of like, like you feel something from the movie, but it's probably like sort of like a high from the movie where it's this, kind of a moment of inspiration or whatever that you got from watching that. But then in like the next hour, you kind of have like come down from that and you go on about your day. And most of the time, I think, someone could definitely argue against this, but I think most of the time, like, we don't go and then like begin to reorder things in our lives because we had like a big moment because we felt something from a movie that we watched. I think the same can be said for singing in church. Like, you can go in and feel inspired or feel something, and I'm not saying that that's wrong, but maybe, you can easily get caught up in like sort of easy feelings, like in the moment. But I think to actually have been in a place where the Spirit is ministering to you and something is happening inside of you, to where you're actually, as you're singing, like grappling with the words and with the emotions going on inside of you. And, that's a much more like complex moment that actually could provoke like lasting change. And I'm just saying, like, I don't see a lot of like, I would love to see like crying in church, honestly. Like, I think that would, not that always has to mean that something is going on inside of you, but like to see more freedom of expression in some ways. Again, a lot of times I don't do anything other than like kind of stand there, but a lot's going on in my head and in my heart. So I think it can be all of the above, but I don't know. I sort of wonder if sometimes we like oversimplify things, as opposed to saying like, I feel like there's a lot that can go on in that time. And yes, we want to protect against probably, people who, I think what a lot of people that I hear saying in, as I read blogs or listen to people talking about this kind of stuff, is that you want to protect against that, like kind of summer camp high moment where it's fun to get caught up in a moment like you would at, another concert, or, somewhere that's not Christian or anything, where you kind of have this moment, but then you sort of go on. Like we want church singing to be different. But I don't know. I think it's really complex. And so I don't have like fully completed thoughts on it at this point, but, I guess I feel like sometimes it gets boiled down to something that feels too simple for what's actually going on in the corporate worship gathering.
That's really good.
I like that thought process. And so as my kind of response to some of that is, let's not see ourselves when it comes to churches as the guardians of someone's experience. We're the guardians of the scriptures, but like, it's not so more than worrying about, is it manipulating someone or is it, creating a place where someone can be free. I think we just trust what God's doing in people's lives. How do we know that someone was manipulated? Like that so that kind of stuff. Like, so I think you just kind of trust what God's doing in people's lives and allow the space to express it, and just trust that. So yeah, that's kind of, I'm not trying to like just be quick with that answer, but it's like, let's not feel like it's up to us to make sure someone doesn't have a, experience that's been manipulated. How do you know that, right? So so I appreciate you saying that. Like I know that it's one thing to think like, oh, we're going to do these things and it's going to create this.
Yes.
We reject that.
That's manipulation.
Yes. We reject that. I'm talking about going, oh, was it real? Was it not real? Was it, that type of thing. Talk about the movie fan. I remember when Rudy came out, the Notre Dame football movie. I was like middle school. Like everyone who watched Rudy after it was over, like went out and practiced.
Yeah.
It's like everybody who watched 300 went to the gym the next
after
day.
You see Rocky for the first time, you go for a run.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Drink some raw eggs.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that can be great, and then it's sort of like, okay, it's not in our control to like know what happens, following that, even though in the church, obviously we care about people. We want to see fruit continue to grow, or people to continue to grow and produce fruit. So anyways.
I think that's well said. One of the things that Todd and our music team is really good about, and they do a great job, is really because as the kind of main people who pick the 4 songs that we sing typically on a Sunday morning, is they have a filter for theology, for singability, for kind of musical style. Does it fit with kind of what we tend to do? Why is it important for churches to take that process seriously? And if Todd's on sabbatical, otherwise I'd just ask him. But Dean, maybe you can speak to that, and then Ashlyn, if you have thoughts, like if you're only singing 4 songs, why does it matter which 4 songs?
Well, in that same John 4 exchange with Jesus and the Samaritan woman, after he talks about spirit and truth, he says these are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks, a.k.a. God cares about how we worship. He really cares a lot. So since he cares, then he says it's true worship. So there's true worship means there's false worship. And if the spirit and truth kind of worshipers are the kind of worshipers that God seeks, means there's a certain kind of worship that he does not seek. So that's why I think we need to be consistent with that and care about that and realize this does matter to God. He wants his people not just to worship, but to worship him rightly. and that's a theme throughout the Bible. Like before the cross, before our sins were fully atoned for and forgiven, and we had no access to God outside of a priest, and outside of a sacrificial system, the process you had to go through to like order mattered, right? Order mattered, and so that doesn't mean that order's gone away. It just means that Jesus is our priest, right? Jesus is our prophet. He's our king. So I think that's the main reason, and also from a discipleship standpoint, some of the things talked about, but the emotional side of things, I think maybe the difference in somebody going out and running after seeing Rocky, or actually doing it every day is discipleship in a Christian context. So people have these kind of encounters and moments and experiences, and when everything kind of maybe comes to a head in their life during a song or a sermon or whatever it might be, like I think then the other brothers and sisters have a responsibility to help people put the foundation underneath that, so it does last and it does have feet to it and those type of things. But so I think we also like 4 songs is a lot of our service. Sometimes we even do 5, right? That's a long time. What is it, 25 minutes, something like that?
Yeah.
We meet for an hour and 10 probably. Yep. That's a lot of our service. So guess what? That matters. So I want to make sure what we're singing's right. That also the whole point, it's not a concert. We want our folks to sing so that it's easy, that's singable, easy to pick up on. It's not, the band just does their own little riffs the whole time. It's actually led. So I just think all that stuff matters a lot to God and matters for the church.
Any thoughts to add?
No, I mean, I agree. I think all of that makes sense and is really helpful to consider. Yeah. And I mean, kind of even to just continue what Dean was just saying there, like the reason that we sing is because it's biblical and it's been given to us by God for how the church should worship. And so what we sing should also follow that, So I think that's why, to your question, Alex, of why it matters that we, are singing about the right things and that we want to teach people about who God is through singing. That's because we learn about who God is through song that we even see in the scriptures, And so I think that's, with anything, you have to ask, we're not singing like just to have like another fun, different thing to do in the service. There are deep purposes for it. And so what those songs contain should also flow out of that to teach and uphold truth. So
yeah, I think about it in a way that we have 52 Sundays that we gather, Lord willing, every year. And let's call it 4 songs a week. Like there's a tremendous responsibility to choose rightly how to use a very limited number of opportunities to shape and shepherd and help form the church through song. And so, I think that, and I'm like I said before, thankful that Todd and his crew see this well, and they take those 4 songs seriously, and they want to put on a weekly basis based on where you're going in your teaching, and to songs that complement and reinforce and help guide and teach those things. And really, like, one of the things, I don't know who said it first, but something along the lines I've heard is, theology sung is theology remembered. And oftentimes when when you only have a limited number of opportunities, like, somebody's going to remember maybe the point of your sermon, but they probably won't remember specific like sentences from it. Music, because of the way it's set to, tempo and key and all that, like it hits different, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
And people remember it. And so in that crisis moment, like they may know from your teaching that God is sovereign and in control, but it's easier to sing in that moment it as well. Like, and what are they most likely to go look at after the service on their way home? I love that song. Let me go find it. Yep.
More than let me look up that text. It's just human nature, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a bad thing either. Like, if we're singing the truth of the scriptures, great, but I think people are more prone to think, like, I know I am, if I'm somewhere at a conference or hear another preacher or something like that, or at another church's service, and I hear a song I like, I'm much more likely to go Google that real quick and see, oh, what's that song? That's a great song, than I am going to Google the preacher. I'm going to Google that church, that song, that kind of thing. So,
yeah.
So the songs we pick out too also can lead you different directions. Mm-hmm. So we also want the songs we sing, when someone goes and looks at them, that doesn't lead them down a dangerous path of churches that aren't gospel-centered, Bible preaching churches.
Absolutely.
Or prosperity preachers, or that kind of things. All this stuff matters.
Yeah. All right, last question on this, and then we'll transition into the local on tap. But what are your favorite hymns and songs that we sing in the church? I mean, doesn't have to, I mean, our church, any church, just like what are some of your favorite songs to sing corporately?
Gosh, I should have thought more about this. I love In Christ Alone. I also love On Christ the Solid Rock I Stand. I really love King of Kings. I think that's just such a great song. That's like my, like, if I had my fist bump moment, that would be my song to do that in. I'm trying to think about like hymns. Okay, this is like a random hymn, and it's more because I just love the music. I love Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee. I don't know that I've ever even sung it in church. Maybe at First Baptist, like back in the day as a kid. But I do love that hymn. I love Mighty Fortress. There's a lot of, hymns are wonderful.
Is that, forgive me here, everyone please don't send in like LOLs at me for being so dumb. Is Joyful, Joyful, is that also Ode to Joy? Dun, dun, mm-hmm,
yes.
mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I love when like a big, huge like European choir does it.
Yes.
Like that is awesome.
Yes.
That's a great choice. Dean, what are your?
That we do on Sunday morning. I love His Mercy Is More.
Yep.
I'm friends with Matt Boswell, so that's just kind of always cool when your buddies writes a song. It's pretty neat. And then I like Not I But Christ and Me, City of Light, a lot. We could sing In Christ Alone every single Sunday, and so once every 7 days, great. I could sing it every Sunday for the rest of my life until I go to heaven.
Yes.
Like it would be great. So that would definitely be on there for me. Those are probably kind of like that. When I see those like on the set list, I'm like fist pump. Like that makes me like pretty pumped up, like ready to go. Great Is Thy Faithfulness. We're gonna go hymn. Probably be one of my favorites there. I would think if I had to rank them, that's right. Yeah, there is parts of it as well that I just love.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. There's one of my favorite lyrics in the history of a song is, my sin not in part but the whole. I mean, this all that goes after that is just incredible. That's fist pump time for me.
I was gonna say Christ Our Hope in Life and Death is up there for me.
That's another great song.
And then I can't think of the.
Our band does an awesome version of that too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god, I can't think of the name of the song. There's another one that I really like, but it's blanking. I'm blanking on it.
There's a song I like out there. I just don't know the name of it.
I like songs.
It'll be in the show notes that don't exist.
I would like Pat Scott, Alex's mother, most loyal listener, to come up to the lobby on Sunday next time she sees me and tell me what her favorite City Church song is that we do at church.
She will tell you.
Thank you, Pat.
Don't you worry.
I'd like to know.
A hymn, we used to do it. We haven't done it in a long time, but There Is a Fountain. It's kind of a weird song, like admittedly, but there is a fountain filled with blood, and everybody's like, "Whoa!" like, what did I come to? But I'm a big fan of that song too. So, all right. Well, any other thoughts on musical worship and singing in the church?
Just that it matters a lot.
Yeah. If you don't sing, sing.
Yes. Yeah. Let's talk about it for like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
No too cool for school stuff. If you know Jesus, I'm talking about for believers, not guests that don't know Christ, but like people who know. If you're standing in the service and you're just like arms folded, like mouth
arms
shut,
folded are fine.
It's part of the. I don't mean exclusively just that, but just not singing at all, just staring, like waiting to get to the sermon. Or if you walk in 3 songs deep every Sunday, it's like, come on, man. I mean, like that's not a Christian response to this.
Heaven is going to be difficult for those people.
I know, for real. They're going to be.
It's like this is literally what all of our eternity is heading toward. So
they're just waiting. They know they got plenty ahead.
I got plenty. That's terrible.
I'm kidding.
Oh my gosh. Well, we really ended this on like a bad note.
Great.
Yeah. No. Sing if you don't, and if you do, sing some more.
Yeah. No too cool for school.
Yeah. The Lord
and
is
you can
worthy.
cry. We won't judge you.
Yeah. If you cry, Ashton's gonna come hug you if you cry.
I don't know about that.
She's gonna be like, "We need more of this. I'll cry with you." All right.
Spirit and truth. Cry on.
Yep. All right. So transitioning the end of the podcast to some local Tallahassee. What is the best concert you have attended in Tallahassee?
In Tallahassee. Okay, so probably my first one ever. I was in 7th grade, and my friends and I just got dropped off at the Civic Center. and how times have changed, like with parents not letting kids just do fun things
Oh, yeah.
anymore.
It was like pre-cell phone, like
Yeah,
pre.
yeah.
I mean,
and we were fine. We
Yep.
knew where to meet our parents afterwards, and all was fine. Stone Temple Pilots at the height of the grunge era at the Civic Center was unbelievable.
pretty awesome.
And it was in 1993, and they had a full like mosh pit. It was crazy.
Oh my gosh.
We were in the side seats, not on the floor, thankfully, or we'd have been just crushed.
Killed.
That, and then also I saw DC Talk at the Civic Center,
Nice.
which was awesome. And then I've seen a lot of country concerts. And when I was younger, especially in Brooks and Dunn, was in the height of Brooks and Dunn,
Oh, yeah.
like when Hard Working Man, Boots Scootin' Boogie, Neon Moon, all that was like in its prime. And also it was when Derek Brooks and Warwick Dunn, Brooks and Dunn, were both stars for FSU football.
Yep.
So for the encore, Ronnie
Oh, my
Dunn came
gosh.
out in a Warwick Dunn jersey. And Kix Brooks came out in a Derek Brooks jersey in Tallahassee. It was
That's
awesome.
great.
It was
Oh, I bet
awesome.
people went
Yeah,
crazy.
I'm not even a Florida State fan. It was awesome. So that would be it. And then I saw Jars of Clay at Ruby Diamond,
Ooh.
which is
Wow,
pretty
that'd be
neat. Yeah, when
great.
I was in high school, it was awesome. Yeah, those are things that come to mind. I've seen a ton. I mean, like, I've loved seeing Zach Brown band, like, but still, that still to me was not what those like Brooks and Dunn, like that kind of stuff was just awesome in my kind of time. But I gave way too many. But number
that's good.
number one is definitely Stone Temple Pilots.
Nice.
I also grew up loving the mega country concerts, and we saw Shania Twain at the Civic Center
Nice.
when I was in like 4th grade, I think. And it was awesome. Like, I still remember it. I'm sad to say that I think I wore overalls to that concert, but I was 9, so nobody touched me.
Man, I feel like a farmer.
Yeah, nothing says Shania Twain vibes like overalls when you're an elementary schooler, but sang every word, I'm sure.
That's
So.
awesome. Any other like runner-ups?
Oh man, I feel like I'm blinking on like I really don't think I've seen a lot of concerts in Tallahassee. Saw Sister Hazel at Floyd's.
I did too.
Nice.
That's pretty solid.
So that was a good concert.
When I went, Creed opened for them.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was-
There you go.
So X101.5, local radio station Tossie. I don't even know if it still exists or not.
There you go.
They put it on. It had a CD called Locals Only CD. Only local bands could be on it. And they put Creed's My Own Prison on it, and that's what got that song out.
Interesting. Okay.
Interesting.
Also, on a slightly different scale, this is really niche Tallahassee Christian culture. I did go to Wild Woodstock a couple of times, which was like
Like a Wild Presbyterian.
That's
where
awesome.
like the Christian band in someone's parents' garage in Clarn Lakes plays, and then they have that like at Wildwood Presbyterian. I did go to that a couple
I forgot.
times.
I remember. I
Nice.
never went, but I remember that being a
I
thing.
feel like Craig
Oh,
Stewart
yeah.
might have been in charge
I
of
bet
that to some
Craig and I
degree.
were probably there at the same time and never even knew it.
So the best concert I've seen was at the Civic Center, and it was Elton John. And you can judge away. I bet
that was awesome.
It was
But
incredible.
does the Civic Center deserve Elton John?
I'm about to say that's kind of shocking that he would go there.
it was pre-renovation, so
Wow.
like,
Go
but
Elton.
Does the Civic Center deserve Elton John?
No offense to the Civic Center, but like it's Elton John.
like I don't remember. I think the concert started at like 8:00, and he came out at 8:00, played an absolute killer show for like 2 hours and 15 minutes. Took like a 5-minute break and came out and played an encore for like another 30 minutes.
That's
it was
amazing.
incredible. Like it was hit after hit after hit.
Did you cry during Candle in the Wind?
No, I did not.
Thank you, Royal Family fan over there. The redone Diana version.
just
Yes,
had to-
I did
I
not,
had to see it.
but it was very nice. I enjoyed listening to it. So that's like the best concert I've been to for sure. I did also see Nickelback at the Civic Center.
Let's go. I saw Three Doors Down.
like
Listen, one of the best parts of being like at a certain age is you can stop pretending that you hate all Nickelback songs.
yeah, I don't understand it. I still listen to
Everyone
them.
who claims they hate Nickelback still knows the words to all their songs.
Yeah.
You ever notice that? Which
Like
means
you don't
you've
belt out
listened.
Photograph?
Exactly.
Because I sure do.
Exactly. I saw Alan Jackson
Oh,
twice. Clay Walker and Martina McBride opened.
Oh,
Martina
gosh.
had her first song out, or her first album out. She had one song on the radio, and she sang like 3 or 4 songs. And we were like, oh, she was really good. It was like in 92, 93, something like
love
that. And I saw a few Christian artists came through town back in the day. Here, I mean, DC Talk the Civic Center was amazing, amazing. And then Small Town Poets
Mm-hmm.
I saw them at Ruby Diamond. That was really cool. And so,
Nice.
yeah,
Jake Owen, I saw at Floyd's in college, which
Okay,
was
I saw him in the
that's
Civic
very
Center.
Tallahassee.
yeah, that was
very Tallahassee.
that was a good show. So yeah. Anywho, I haven't been in ages. I don't even know if it's still open, but I always had a good time. Bradfordville Blues Club.
Oh, yeah.
Little
a
hidden
great-
gem in Tallahassee. Check that out if it's still open. But anyways, that's it for this week's episode of The Local Dive. We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to The Local Dive, a podcast diving into deep and shallow musings about Christ, the church, and culture. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow The Local Dive on social media and continue the conversation with us on Instagram and Twitter at The Local Dive Pod.